Just, I think it should. We just stream directly onto YouTube into an unlisted video, and then that, they can just refer to it later on. So that's set up. And Calvin, would you like to introduce yourself, cover a bit about your background, and then maybe we'd get to talk to the fellows.
Yeah, sure. So hey everyone, I'm Calvin. I was lucky enough to jump straight into crypto after graduation, but while I was in school, I actually kind of taught myself actually how to code because I was actually an econ and stat kind of major in university, but actually was just going to these different hackathons, mainly for the free food and just the good vibes. But then along the process, started to play around with a lot more product based stuff myself. And I think that actually paid off the most where when it came time for graduation, I had previously been working at a startup, which maybe you guys have heard of. It's called Republic. It's the unaccredited investor part of the AngelList and CoinList family. So I had initially been planning to go back there, but at that time, the business was actually very not profitable. And so they actually couldn't offer me a full-time role. So I was like during my final week, just like, scrambling to figure out how to find a job, and had been trading a little bit of cryptocurrency at the time. And so I just applied on Binance on the website, and somehow got my resume looked at and got rejected maybe a day or two after I applied. But the thing was that I was pretty persistent. I had applied for 6 different roles, and they only responded to one email saying I wasn't qualified for this role because they weren't hiring undergrads at the time. And I asked, thanks for the response. I was just wondering if you guys meant that I'm rejected for all 6 roles or just one. And about a week later, I actually got a call from who would be my boss, who was previously leading the research team at Binance. And what he said was that my resume had my GitHub link on there, which at the time, I wasn't a very, seasoned developer by any means. But he thought that it was very interesting that somebody that didn't have a technical background was working to try to learn how to code. And I think that's something that's really powerful for all of us here, that it's not about like where you came from or what you have done. It's about what you plan to do, right? And I'm really confident that those of you guys that are tuning in this late to get on these calls and hear a lot of the other mentors in the DevFolio ecosystem, that you guys are working hard and learning more yourselves. And I think that the decentralized coding world has so much to offer. And I'm really excited to be able to meet all of you guys, much like I bumped into some of the earliest folks in crypto by chance when I was learning. The first person that actually told me about cryptocurrency happened to be Balaji, who used to be the ex-CTO of Coinbase. Back then, he was still a professor at Stanford, and he was just trying to get people to basically do some online tasks. So I used to just help some of the Stanford professors look for typos in their papers and journals. And I was paid $20 an hour at that time, which for college me, I was like, oh man, this is great, right? And then I just got busy and I forgot to sell the BTC that they paid me in. And then BTC went up double. And I was like, wow, I'm getting $40 an hour. And I sold all of it right away and didn't even look at like BTC price. And then I think the next day BTC doubled to something like $2,400. And that's when I realized that I really needed to, dig deeper in this space. So I think that we all have, a lot of things where we slowly learn as much over time and just try to play around with more and more things as we build more. And I was lucky enough to have a boss at Binance that allowed me to continue to play around with all things in the decentralized world, whether it was DeFi or other protocols. And so it meant that I got to kind of build on, let's say, flash loans when Aave first launched the feature on testnet. and some of these other, early products that these protocols released, that I was lucky enough to have the freedom at my, day job to be able to just play around with these as a researcher. And so that's where I really believe that now I actually have left Binance about 2 months ago to focus on a decentralized incubator. I previously was able to build up a lot of the Binance Launchpad and was lucky enough to actually go to Bangalore back in, I think, 2019 to ETH India because one of the launch pads that I helped lead at Binance was actually Matic. So I have built a lot of friends in the space in lots of cities that I never would have expected I would have been able to go to. And I think the experience really humbled me and really showed me, how much, awesome building is happening in India. So as we're building out our decentralized launchpad and incubator process now that I'm out of Binance, we're also thinking a ton about how to try and make sure that we, tap into as many developer communities around the world, because some of the most best performing launchpads that we had at Binance were teams where places where, to be honest, Silicon Valley doesn't typically go to, Pune or to, Belarus or Romania, whatever it might be. But that's where we found some of our best launchpads, right? And so that's where, I don't really have an agenda for the call today. I just kind of want to answer some questions, talk about any of the topics that you guys want. I love all things minor extractable value, flash loans. Ask me about anything. I've forked a ton of AMMs and I've done a lot of research on the kind of DEX side of the world. And I'm happy to answer any questions with regards to anything that you guys have been kind of paying attention to lately within the decentralized world.
Yeah, thanks for that overview. And yeah, kind of agree. Like now, the possibilities are truly decentralized. It doesn't matter where you are, and I think it's better to be located in a place like India where you can, keep your costs low and still, build a world-class product like the Matic team has done.
That's actually something that we were playing around with because we've been seeing how high the interest rates are in some of these DeFi protocols. And we realized that, if let's say we raise, $100,000 for someone's hackathon project, and we can earn, let's say, 40% APY on stable coins in some sort of, yield farm on, let's say, Matic or, some other place, then that's $40,000 a year in interest revenue, right? That if we can take that interest and then we basically use that as stipends to pay developers, that's actually not a bad, way to de-risk, yourself and be able to obviously pay the bills and pay for food, whatever you need, right? But that then you can build without necessarily needing a traditional venture capital kind of investment, right? And I think that as a builder, I think it's really important to make sure that you keep the upside in what you build. I think a lot of teams, unfortunately, we kind of, as and Binance is also guilty of this, that we took a lot of upside away from project teams that we invested in because we got some really great valuations for really, really low prices, right? And so as you, go out and continue to work really hard on your projects, I think it's important to keep in mind that this is something you've built, right? And everyone else is just along for the ride. So I hope that, everyone here is willing to embrace taking risks. And I think that the cost of living, having a low cost of living, helps it make it easier for you to embrace that risk taking and then go and build what you want to build.
Sure. Also, yeah, before I hand it over to the fellows to ask your questions, how much more time do you have?
Oh, I still have till I have 17 minutes left. So yep.
Sure. Yeah, folks, over to you. Any questions, anything you'd like to ask? Can be like anything, literally anything under the sun.
Hi, Calvin Anshul here.
Okay.
Sorry, please.
Yeah, I would like to go first if that is all right.
Sure, go ahead.
Go for it.
So, hi, Kelvin. Very happy to have you here. It's really a privilege. And one thing that I wanted to ask you was that as a developer, we think about making projects and making things efficient around it. But having built most of it, now I'm stuck on a part where people are asking me about the tokenomics of my project and how the community will interact with the tokens and all. So please, it's a very broad-ended question. So can you tell me, apart from the actual coding stuff that goes into a decentralized project, how do we handle this tokenomics and maintaining the community interest and actually making them, ensuring them that it is a legit project and stuff like that?
Yeah, sure. I'll generally just say like three kind of key tips, I'd say. And of course, all of these tips, I think, depend from project to project. But I think the number one thing is that if you have a token, it's important to know does that token really help reach your KPIs? So I guess, what would you call a success for a platform, right? I think that, for example, if you have an NFT marketplace, right, and you're selling these different NFTs, maybe the metrics are how many NFT projects you support, how many NFTs you sell, the valuation, total sales, right, that you do on this platform. I think it's important to start first of what your goals are, and then ask the question of what the token is used to do, right? And I think that that's the reason why fair launches and some of these other kind of new mechanisms that have happened over the last year or so in DeFi have really taken off, because they're kind of a direct to consumer kind of approach at trying to get tokens into the hands of people that would actually be able to help achieve your goals. I actually really like an article from UMA Protocol. Let me just search it up and then I'll drop it in the chat here. But that they have something called KPI options, which I think are a really cool way of aligning your community with your users or your I guess use cases of your platform. And so the general gist is it's kind of like a prediction market. So I guess I don't know how deep into DeFi everyone is here, but it's more like a binary outcome system where if, let's say, I have an NFT project and my goal is to hit $100 million in sales, I can mint a token that says, I'll pay you one token of my token if we hit this sales goal together. And I think that there are a lot of ways where tokens in general, more importantly, are permissionless ways to work together. I think everyone kind of maybe overcomplicates things and tries to make a lot of these kinds of token things become, a fight between investor or developer or builder versus taker, if you will, from an investment perspective. But I think it's really important that we think about these from more of a, how do we use this unit of account within our ecosystems to try and align the incentives of both users and the protocol itself. So pretty much everything you do should come from that angle. So I think the specifics, of course, would kind of depend from project to project. But then the other kinds of things are more along the lines of kind of the pace at which tokens vest. At Binance, we used to try to force pretty long lockups to show that the team's not going anywhere, right? That if you don't get your tokens liquid on day one, it shows that you will have to stick around for longer in order to get the value out of what you've built, right? So I think it's really just making sure that people feel comfortable in that if let's say investors have some lockups, that it's like the same length as the team. That's usually typically a fair way to allow both investors and team members to feel like everyone's at the same table. And I guess the last thing is kind of like the valuation, that based on your progress or your traction, we're lucky enough that in the DeFi world, there's so many products now that already have lots of usage before they launch a token, right? The best example, of course, is Uniswap, where it had hundreds of millions of dollars of assets in its protocol before it even launched the token, right? So that's always going to be the gold standard or the metric where everyone is kind of benchmarked against. And that if you do decide to launch a token, it's important to realize that investors and other users have an opportunity to compare you to other things that are already live. So that if you don't have something ready for everyone to be able to use right away, it's hard for investors to justify a similar valuation. Other than that, I think everything else is pretty straightforward, and happy to chat more after the call as well to answer any specifics, but those would be my kind of higher level, I think, kind of answers to anyone here that may be looking at launching a token in the future, to hopefully help, organically grow a lot more of the usage of anything that you guys build.
Great. Probably Calvin, you can drop your Twitter and Telegram if you're comfortable.
Yeah, sure. Let me just put the handle. It's the same on both Telegram and Twitter. Sometimes my Twitter and Telegram get a lot of messages, so if I don't respond, just feel free to ping me twice. It's not because I didn't want to talk to you.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I think Anshuman also had a question.
Hi, yeah. Hi, Calvin. Thanks for being here. So, an interesting thing that I was looking at in one of the tweets that Denver linked to us before this call was how you talk about multi-chains can be like different countries. I just wanted to get your idea of how DeFi is all sort of evolving. I don't know, maybe out of Ethereum yet, or are they still going to be in Ethereum? From your perspective, if somebody's getting into Web3 new, is Ethereum still the right place for DeFi products? Is it the only place we should be looking at, or we should start looking at alternatives such like Solana is coming up with DeFi a lot. Obviously, BSC and AVAX are there, but they don't have their own set of problems. Or would it be completely limited to layer 2 solutions? I would like your view on multi-chains and layer 2 solutions as well in regards to DeFi.
So I guess like why I love the city analogy or the country analogy, because I think touching on what we were talking about, like the India and burn rate or cost of living, right? There's a reason why you guys haven't all migrated to another country, right? And I think that's exactly the kind of logic that I think a lot of people have in the decentralized world. I was lucky enough to see this as well at Binance when I was leading staking. A lot of people, maybe their first blockchain they ever used just because their friend happened to use it. Might be like EOS, Tron, Tezos, some of these other ones that don't really have that much smart contract usage compared to these other projects and products that you've already seen, right? And people kind of stick with habits. It's actually a lot of friction to download a new wallet, very similar to traditional software where it's hard for getting people to download a new app. And so I would say that there's still going to be a lot of network effects. It's always going to be hard to beat Ethereum, but it's very clear that if a lot of users exist from places like Binance and they already have a centralized account, or if they already have an FTX account, then it's very likely that they will go and move over to whichever chain that exchange kind of provides or supports. And I think that a great example is that both Binance and Binance and FTX used to support Tron, or I think they still do support Tron withdrawals of USDT and other assets. And a lot of high frequency traders like this because Tron is a faster chain than Ethereum mainnet. So then you have some of the most regulated firms in the world. They're trading assets on Tron or transferring assets on Tron. Even though they might not really love the Tron blockchain, it's the cheapest solution for them to move funds from Binance to FTX or FTX to Binance. And so that's part of the reason why a lot of folks started using some of these chains. I think economics is something that we cannot ignore. And it's very clear that most of the world cannot afford a few $100 transactions all the time, right? Whereas, maybe some of the most valuable stuff will continue to exist on Ethereum, but the everyday transactions, like let's say me paying you for lunch, I don't think I want to pay $100 gas fee to do that unless if we're having a really expensive lunch, right? So then I probably don't want to have a very expensive lunch with you in the first place, right? so that's where I feel like it's very important for us to consider all kinds of chains because different use cases have different I think costs associated to it, right? That if you want to ensure the security of like a luxury good, let's say a $100,000 car, right? And that thing is put on a really cheap chain, it doesn't really make sense per se, because the willingness to pay for that individual that was buying this luxury good in the first place was relatively high. So maybe they are willing to pay for a very decentralized but much more expensive trading, transaction. Whereas, like I said, just you paying me back for my lunch, or my favorite Indian sweet is kaju katli, right? So if I pay you back for a box of kaju katli that you gave me, I don't think I want to pay a very high gas fee for that. So I think a lot of what we want to be able to do is try to make sure that we keep all of our options open. However, that being said, the Solana ecosystem requires Rust, as does the Polkadot ecosystem as well. Another one of our relatively successful launch pads, Elrond, and also another project based in the US called Near, are also Rust-based products. So it's, I think, still a barrier of entry for a lot of folks to learn a brand new language. I think Solidity, we're lucky enough that there's a lot of stuff on Stack Overflow, lots of folks that already know this language, and more importantly, a lot of people that are really passionate about trying to teach others. Whereas I think a lot of the folks that learned Rust or understand Rust, unfortunately, a lot of them work at very expensive finance jobs and don't really have that much time to try and kind of help build a better community of developers. So it's harder to find all of these kinds of online resources to help you learn, right? So I think if some of you probably are up for the challenge and want to try something new, then I think it's very valuable to try and learn more in the Rust ecosystem. But that if you're just starting off, I think the easiest thing to do is for sure to start in the Solidity world or Viper world if you're a Python fan, just because there's much more examples of that out there for you to play around, test things, and try and break things, right? And I think that that's only the best way to learn.
Thanks. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think another follow-up question on this is, you're right. Currently, Solidity has a lot more resources, but compared to Web 2, I still feel like there's a lot of best practices missing. I mean, when I go out, suddenly when I'm working on HTTP, simple HTTP apps, I know, hey, this is how the flow is working. This is what you're supposed to do. This is what gets you wrecked. With Solidity, I don't really find that consolidated somewhere. At best, what I've been able to find is reentry attacks with the withdraw function, or let's say use safe math, but nothing sort of like concrete. Hey, these are the things that really wreck the person. So where do you go? What do you suggest to newcom developers to get access to these best practices for Solidity at least?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. To be honest, I need more of these best practices myself too. I think a lot of my commits aren't great. I think, to be honest, the best way to learn is for sure to look at some of the top projects in this space. I'd mentioned teams like Aave or Curve, or some of the stuff that Andre has written in the Urine ecosystem. I think the best way to learn is really just to look at the projects that have the most money in them. Because someone else has been angry enough that they want to make sure that this thing is going to, look and have as many good best practices in there as possible. So to be honest, that's my best answer. I'm sorry, it's not the best one, but I definitely think that, that's where I would personally look to learn more as I get to focus more on building and shipping code myself.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
One other thing would be, just in general, if you're using any protocols or playing around with any of these projects, most of them have verified their smart contracts on Etherscan or BSC scan or whichever block explorer they have. So definitely go take a look into that kind of page. I personally have really pretty much read every single line of the original Sushi Swap staking and farming contract. I think that's one of the most well written, or at least very interestingly written smart contract that I think I can learn a lot from and use as like a basis. So just go look into each of the pieces of code. Especially UniV2 was incredibly well written. I would highly recommend also taking a look into that. And then maybe the Curve white paper, which is like a 6-page PDF, is a great read as well, to just understand a little bit more on how it's kind of improved on Uniswap for stablecoins. So I just kind of point to those as just some examples off the top of my head.
So if I may ask, who wrote the Sushi Swap contract? that you
So
mentioned?
I actually still don't know. I have a lot of guesses, but yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a guaranteed answer either.
So,
I will say though that
so was
I
it
think
Chef Nomi or?
oh, it was for sure Chef Nomi, but I don't know who
Okay.
Chef Nomi
Yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah.
But that I think that it's very important to learn from these because, to be honest, a lot of the hacks I think in this space can be preventable if you read a lot of the past hack exploits and understand some of the issues that past projects have had. So, like for example, if you have any type of like advanced strategies or something else, we've seen a lot of things like the fake jar from Pickle where someone tried to create like a similar contract that tricks the pool into thinking that it's this type of contract. I would highly recommend trying to make sure that you have a lot of things like whitelisting or I'm not sure if time locks are the best way to do it, but trying to make sure that a lot of steps have extra checks are always helpful. So as many required statements, I know it costs a little more gas, but it's definitely, I think, it makes me feel more peace of mind when there's more things that can check for ways for stuff to break. So that'd be my one last kind of comment there. Unfortunately, I do have to hop off. This was really great. I'd love for you guys to, ask more questions, and actually maybe the best way for all of you guys to ask questions so that everyone can see like what the questions are is maybe I'll just drop a Google Doc here where it's a dev folio questions, and I'll just make it where anyone can make a comment. And we'll maybe do like an online town hall, if you will. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment in this doc. I'll just drop it here in this Zoom chat right now. And then hopefully in the future, anything else that you guys have, I'll be able to answer them, moving forward.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks a lot, Calvin, for making the time.
Yeah, cheers. Really appreciate it. And looking forward to hopefully hearing more about all of what you guys have been building as well in the future.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Hey, yeah, so let me just